الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله عدد خلقه رضا نفسه وزنات عرشه ومداد كلماته ومنتهى علمه جميع ما شاء وخلق وضرع وبرع عالم الغيب شهادة الرحمن الرحيم المالك القدوس العزيز الحكيم وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك له الحمد يحيي ويميت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وحبيبه وخليله وأرسله بهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على دين كله لو كرهات المشركين ما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alright, so we're going to continue with our classes of the Bayaan, dealing with the subject of the knowledge that is obligatory upon every individual. We've covered over the years, and we've covered this subject numerous times over the years. Sometimes some explanations that I give to it is deeper, more in detail than others. There's sometimes where I give it where the person covers and learns just enough. This one, I want to kind of like go the intermediate route, all right? So we can move on to other texts, but also the person is acquainted. So what that means is that we're gonna have vocabulary. I'm not gonna give a whole lot of vocabulary, but we're gonna have vocabulary. I mean, certain points of highlight that's important, that you should highlight that's very important. Terminology, right? Which is still vocabulary, but terminology. Why is it important for terminology? Because one of the disadvantages, it's an advantage that helps us, but it's also a disadvantage for us as well. And I'm talking about English-speaking people, or Black Americans particularly. Because why is it a disadvantage? Because when you're learning your Islam in the non-original language, you kind of like lose understanding to some degree. And then what happens is, as well as terminology, the same way where you have books of law, where you have law, the language in law isn't the same as you speaking in everyday language. Medical language, in medicine, it has its own language, right? And the same thing in each of the sciences, the various sciences in Islam, it has its own language as well. And, we'll get into that and discuss that. What Umdat'l Bayaan is, it's a book of ahkam, hukum, rulings, okay? Now, these rulings, of course, is extracted or is coming from the source, right? Like, for instance, an example from the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells you in the Quran, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ, right? وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ. Now, when it's time for the salah, what are some of the things that have to take place before you pray? Anybody can answer. They can put in the chat, in the chat, inshallah. They can type inside the chat. When it's time for salah, what are some of the things that you have to take care of before the salah? What are some of the things that has to be done before prayer? Wudu. Now, wudu. What else? So clothing, the time of prayer be in, intention. Right. Okay, so you guys got an idea of where we're going with this. This is also established in that ayat where Allah says, "Aqimus salat." right? Sheikh Abdullahi, he talks about it in his Taqrib al-Dururi, when that the word iqam as-salat, the establishment of prayer, it talks about those things that are shartiyya, those things that are prerequisite, right? That have to be fulfilled in order for these things to be considered valid, right? Because you have prerequisites, you have the prerequisites that you would need to fulfill to even approach the prayer, right? Then you have the prerequisites, those things that are within the prayer. I mean, that has to be taken care of before you even go to the prayer, like tahara, right? Not only just tahara of the self, but also purification of the place, right? You have to, where you praying at. You have to also have purified clothing, right? And so on and so forth. Many of us, this is a common mistake of the untrained, is that if, let's say, a person doesn't wear deodorant and he's been working hard construction all day, and the salat comes in and he's a little musky, right? Does he have to make ghusl? Does that require for him to make ghusl in order to, approach the prayer? No, not necessarily. He doesn't have to. However, it's good, it's a good practice. It's a good practice for it to do so, and it won't be so offensive to others. My signal is going in and out. Okay. I got a full bar, so I'm not understanding. It's clear? Okay. All right, brother Claude. I don't know on the other end. But anyway, so back to what I was saying. Now, so the prayer, it may, the odor in itself, like, men who pray in the masjid, brothers can attest to it, even some sisters too, there's people when they come in the masjid, their feet be balling, right? But it doesn't stop them from making a prayer. I got some stories for you, boy. You get a whiff of that joint while you in sujood, subhanallah, right? But anyway, you want to take care of that odor. But if it's required time for salah, you don't have enough time to go across town or wherever you at to go make ghusl or whatever the case is. But there's other things you can do to try to minimize the odor, for the salat, like maybe wash your feet, go to the bathroom, throw some water under the pits a little bit. You ain't gonna be able to get rid of the odor that's actually in the, in the shirt. But however, it's a valid prayer. Okay? Now, when a woman is on her menses, right? Can she pray? It should be like a no-brainer, right? Yeah. For many of us, right? No, a person can't pray, when they're, a woman can't pray when she's mensing. But however, today, when a person mensing, now women are encouraged to be in the masjid while they on their mens. Right? You can't approach the prayer. The same prayer space, what the difference between the prayer space and the prayer space at home, meaning the prayer space in the masjid and the prayer space at home for women, the difference between the two is? One in the masjid is dedicated for the salat, right? And her dedicated prayer space in her home is her prayer space. There's really no difference. She can't get on. She's not going to approach that musalla, that prayer rug, for salah while she's on her mens. Then why not treat the masjid in the same manner? Right? Why not treat it in the same manner? Especially now when you got technology, people are like, upstreaming internet and so on and so forth, right? So, you're even going to learn, even to the extent of a woman, even if she's a teacher or a student, right? That's the only exception to the rule, that she can recite from the mushaf, but she can't touch it. She can recite from the mushaf, but she can't touch it. So you're going to learn all of these different ahkam, those things pertaining to that. Why? Because the Quran is only supposed to be touched by a person that's that's tahur, that's in purity, right? It's in Surah Waqiyah, right? Allah tells you don't touch the Quran unless you're pure, right? Surah Waqiyah. It's not a thing, so don't let the feminist bug, or the brothers this and the brothers that. One thing that if you adapt Western ideology, that Jahiliyyah, when you become Muslim, you come to Islam in order to change. You don't come into Islam to change Islam. This isn't the same type of society. If you want to be like a maverick or a martyr, then you probably want to stay on the other side, remain with the ops and, and fight that good fight, women's rights and things like that. Allah's deen is complete, right? Allah's deen is complete. So there's no need to bring in anything extra. It's just all a matter of how you're going to, when I say repackage it, I'm not talking about changing it, but repackage it, learn it, and regurgitate it, pass it back to the people so that the people can get Islam. Right? That's your job. That's our job. So anyway, so this ahkam, these are rulings. Now, just to touch on this, on this rulings, ahkam. Ahkam is the plural for the word hukm. If you're taking notes, make sure you highlight that. That's one of your vocabulary words for this week. It's hukm, hukm. If you're writing Arabic, it's ha, kaf, mim, hukm. Right? Dhamma, dhamma, dhamma. On all three letters. Hukmun. Right? I'm sorry. Dhamma, sukoon, dhamma. Sorry. Okay? Hukm. For those with the transliteration, hukm will be Hukm. Hukm. Right? The hukm is established by means of the Kitab wa Sunnah. Right? And there's also other things to play. Just on a basic level. We're talking about on this basic level because I believe within our usul, the usul of Ahlul Medina is 17 sources. Right? Many of them are shared with the other madhahibs. Many of them aren't shared with the other madhahibs. Alright? So just keep that in mind. So the hukm. So Umdat'l Bayaan, a book like Umdat'l Bayaan and other primer books are books of ahkam. They're books of rulings. Right? Now, can there be difference in that particular ruling? Absolutely. Because of the source. Right? But on the level you have three levels of people. You have three types of people. You have what is known as the awam, the general body of people, right? In our time, and I want you to forget what people are talking about today. Focus it from this particular point. The awam doesn't just mean like, oh, you're just a low-level guy, you're nobody. No, it means that this is the person that, what does the awam do? Let me see if I can pull up a text real fast for you by Sheikh Abdullahi, where it goes in detail about who the awam is. Or what is he responsible for? I believe this is the text. Hold on a second. That's not one of your vocabulary words, but it's a word you probably should become familiar with, right? So he talks about the awam, the general body of people. Because what you have is, you have the three types of people. You have the general body of people, the awam, right? You have the mutawasit, and then you have the alim. And of course, within the alim, there's branches within the alim, right? Hold on a second. Now. Okay, so now I pulled up a text by Sheikh Uthman Danfodio, Taqaddam Allah bi rahmati ameen. So he mentions in here, in the first point, that the clarification that the deen is based on making things clear, right? We're not supposed to make things complicate matters for people. That's not why we become Muslim, to make matters complicated, right? Now, when you're saying complication, we're not talking about as far as application of the deen, because you're going to run into complications, right? You're going to run, this is part of Allah Ta'ala's testing. So you're going to run into complications. What do I mean by that? Complications may be, you may have health issues and you want to fast. But that complication of that health issue may prohibit you, or delay you from being able to fast, right? Application. You may, you may want to pray all 5 of your salat in the masjid, but you may have to work, so you're gonna have to pray where you at work, right? Those are issues those are matters that are complicated, right? Then and Allah Ta'ala tests you by means of your level of love that in connection that you have with Him. You made to the point that people may want to fight you for the fact that no other reason other than the fact that you're Muslim. You don't go and antagonize, but the people will come at. Allah will test you by means of those who hate. When He loves you, He gives you His enemies. Right? Now, so he mentions here, he says to make the deen clear. Make things clear is the basis of the deen. And whoever acts from his own opinion is not following who came with the Sharia. Alright? So you might want to put a little star next to that. I'll repeat it again. The deen, the purpose of the deen is to make things clear. Right? To make things clear, and it's based on the deen, meaning it's based on knowledge. Okay? Whoever acts from his own opinion is not following the one who brought the deen. Right? Now, of course, this is where disadvantage comes in at. Where you hear the word ijtihad, they translate it as opinion. And then you be like, oh, well, he just gave his own opinion. Every man got an opinion. No, it's a lot of work to get to that point of ijtihad. Right? It's not saying that that's just a minor thing. Meaning your opinion is some of the things that some of the hukum, like, for instance, a man has to seek his wife's permission in order to get another wife. This is someone's opinion. This is someone's opinion. And matter of fact, just speaking on plural marriages. Matter of fact, when you're talking about plural marriages, it don't even have its own chapter. It's under the chapter of zawaj. It's under the chapter of marriage, right? But anywho, there are, so opinion, meaning it doesn't have no basis. And we just went over this as a discussion in our usul fiqh class. And you can see with the methodology that the sheikh, as he teaches, you can see that he combines usul fiqh principles, and he also incorporates it with fiqh, where you bring the two of them together. Because we went over a chapter dealing with jahil. And jahil, ignorance, is acting on something without anything from the sources of the Sharia to support it. Right? And it's considered making mockery of the deen, which the Shaykh will mention this. He says, whoever acts from his own opinion is not following the one who brought the Sharia. Okay? Next thing he says, however, there are 3 types of people. The first one is people of knowledge who are excellent at finding out what is correct in questions which require proof, even if they are not themselves the mujtahid. Right? That's majority of the people in this time. Why? Because you have the books of ahkam, the books of rulings. You turn to them for sources. This is the purpose of books like Murshad Mu'een, right? Gosh, I can't remember the imam's name right now. Muhammad, what's the imam's name? Type it in the comments. Ibn Ashir, never mind, got it. Ibn Ashir, right? You have Murshad Mu'een, the Akhdari. This is the purpose of these books, right? They're not a new revelation. They're just books that's established based off the principles of Imam Malik. Right? You might follow the Shafi madhab. You follow the Muqasid of Imam Nawawi. Right? These are primer books that get people prepared. Okay? Now, the second, he says the second type of person is the one who's between the general, the ordinary people, the amiyah, the everyday people, and the people of knowledge. They're in between. It is correct to follow them, for them to follow someone who has a clear understanding in the matter at hand. And this is where most of all of us, where we're binded, we're talking about students, where they're binded to follow one of the four schools of law. Right? He says their limited knowledge of the Sharia obliges them to follow that person's example. However, they may not take anything from the one they're following if it is in contradiction to what they already know of the rules of the Sharia. Okay? And no one is permitted to follow someone else's knowledge if it is contrary to the rule of the Sharia. However, you cannot decide this unless you already have a clear knowledge of it. So that's number two. So number one is the alim, right? If you're looking for terminology, the alim, I'm pretty sure everybody knows how to spell that. Ain, lam, what you call it? I'm sorry. Ain alif, lam mim, the alim, right? Or it's also spelled A-A-L-I-M, right? The mutawasit, okay? The mutawasit is the person in the middle, right? And mutawasit, you would spell that with mim, waw, sin, ta, right? Or in English, M-U-W-A-S-I-T, mutawasit, right? So he's the person in between. He's the middleman between his knowledges. He's above the everyday people, but he's not above the scholar, right? He's in between. He's the middleman. That's wasatiyya, in the middle, right? I might have smelled that wrong, but I'll get back to you on it. Then the last person, the third person, is the amiyah, the everyday people, the everyday person. He says they should hold to what they have no doubt about. Otherwise, they're making mockery of the deen and playing with it. And this must be clearly understood. Now, of course, they're binded to follow their teachers, right? But if they don't, they're not connected to a teacher they find, but they still have an obligation to seek out knowledge. Knowledge, the seeking of knowledge does not remove, the obligation is never removed until you hit the grave, right? You had Sahabas that sat with the Prophet ﷺ from the time they became Muslim until death overtook them. Because even after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, many of them went out to teach, and many of them sat and learned in the circles of the senior Sahabas. Right? You had some of the Sahabas who would go and learn from other Sahabas even while the Prophet ﷺ was alive. Right? Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud were one of them. They would go to the more senior, Sahabas, and they would learn from them. They would take knowledge from them. They would sit down and learn, what they got from the Prophet ﷺ. And then when you get into hadith studies, you'll even see that when they start discussing the chain and how, the Sahaba actually didn't learn the hadith directly from the Prophet ﷺ. He actually learned it from Omar, or he learned it from this person, but it's his equivalent of them learning it directly from the Prophet ﷺ. That's in a whole nother discussion. That's a whole nother science in itself. So as you see, how does this relate? Because we're learning ahkam, we have to have a certain decorum as Muslims, as students, right? We have to have a certain type of behavior, a certain etiquette. You can't be knowledgeable and still be a fool. You can't be knowledgeable and still behave like everyone else. Part of the biggest fitna in our time that we're watching is that the Muslims don't see themselves no different from everybody else, except for that they feel that they're saved. that they're from the saved behavior, from the saved sect or the saved ideology or the saved people, right? Well, I got la ilaha illallah, I'll never enter into the fire forever, right? The Sahabas didn't even take this type of approach. But here we are in our time, we're satisfied with this thing, right? Some of us are okay sinning, and so on and so forth, and feel no remorse, no guilt, right? How common it is now that a person does a sin and don't care. And don't even care at all. You're like, that's a sin, right? The most common practice, if you're married, have a disagreement with husband and wife. Let the wife be right and she be like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says such and such says you need to fear Allah. No, you need to fear Allah. Right? This is very common. Let brother and sister do the same thing, right? Yo, you need to fear Allah, such and such, and stop doing such and such. You mind your business, right? It's very common today, right? So these type things, we become Muslim in order to change our lives, especially when many of us we don't live together in a all inclusive like Muslim area or Muslim society. Like, even with Philadelphia, we may have a lot of Muslims here, but we ain't no real Muslim society. Some of the things that you experience is the same jahiliyyah you experience if you used to hang out with kuffar. How I know, because I wasn't Muslim at one point, and I became Muslim, and I'm like, man, this is the same stuff we used to do in jahiliyyah. Like, something wrong here. But then you have to understand the same way that when you're a young boy growing up in the projects, right? And I just want to put this to you. Or you may be even a young man in high school and you desire to become this great biochemist. Everything doesn't always have to be hood related because, I know us black folk, we like try to get away from that stuff. So, boom. So you want to become the next biochemist. But everybody in your class, like they call you an Oreo, right? You're a nerd, you're a nut. Right, that's a nut in Philly. It's a Philly thing. Yo, you a nut, and so on and so forth, or whatever they call you. Because why? Because you're focused. So what does that biochemist do? That aspiring biochemist do? He put a little separation between himself and his friends. They be like, yo, you want to go to this party? Nah, man, I gotta hit this books, man. I got this big test coming up. They got their little jokes. He endures the jokes, but he stays focused and he stays focused on the goals. For some reason, the Muslims, we integrate with each other. Like, yeah, alright, Islam, yeah, blah, blah. And you might have a few brothers that may smoke weed or something like that, and, they struggling, they good brothers, they struggling. But that don't mean you got to go smoke weed with them. You only going to go with them if that's something you want to do. And it's the same thing with that person that desires to be the biochemist. He's going to become the biochemist because that's what he's aspiring to do. Right? We keep saying, we don't have no Hafiz of the Quran because most of us aren't trying hard enough. Everything else you got, in order to obtain anything you want to do with greatness. I'm pretty sure people don't watch the Michael Jordan story, done heard about LeBron, what's my man, Manny Goat. You done heard about all the Lynn Byers, all these guys. And how great they were. What did they do? They put in effort in their craft. And with us as Muslims, the great reward, we not seeking that type of bag. The bag we seeking is in Jannah and not to go to the hellfire. Right? So we have to put in that same type of effort. So what you learn is supposed to affect you and change you. We shouldn't, and you can tell. You should be able to look at something and automatically to see if it's benefit. If you're a person of basira, of insight, of firasa. A lot of our firasa, it seem to have like ketchup and mustard in that joint because we can't see crap. Right? What we see what's right in front of us. And what we think is we can make changes and alter everything and make everything great. But anyway, I digress away from that. So there's three types of people. The person of knowledge. The mutawassit, the people in between the people of knowledge and the ordinary people. If you are learning those issues from those things from obligatory knowledge, When you learn, you have an obligation to teach. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and this is our minhaj of the shehu as well. And you also realize that this is the minhaj of the salaf. How is that? Because people will travel all over the place. Imam Malik, he was known as the Imam al-Dar al-Hijra by means of a hadith. Before people would travel, they talked about it, and they was looking for this scholar in Medina, right? If I find, I'll post the hadith for y'all in the Telegram group. Make sure you join the Telegram group. There's two different Telegram groups. One group is for the discussion, and the other group is for like basically like where I'll put post the classes, the link for class and stuff like that. So there's no discussion in there. Imam Malik, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned about this great imam to come in Medina, right? And of course, this is after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. He's foretelling you about this. That they will they'll beat the horses, like beat the ground in order to come, in order to learn from him. Right? People will come. So whatever you learn, people will come, they learn, and they disperse and go back to their places. For some reason, we haven't been able to establish that. People have been traveling back and forth in the United States to overseas for the last, it's been way before I even throw this number out here, but I'm going to throw this number out here since the 70s. Malcolm went. He set up things where people can study at Azhar, right? Sheikh Tawfiq, rahimahullah, he was one of the benefactors of that, right? Do some research, right? There's other people that went to go study, came back, but if you look at it, we haven't benefited. It's not really doing us. All it is a bowl of confusion. All people seem to be doing is just breaking in smaller and smaller groups until they become individuals, and they don't know how to practice Islam collectively. Look at how small your Eids are getting. Look at how empty the masajids are, right? And it's just breaking smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, right? To the point people are isolated. And then when you're isolated, shaitan plays on you. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned about how the isolated believer, he's weak against the shaitan. Shaitan has a field day with him. Now you have Muslims suffering from the same thing that the kuffar suffer from, right? Anxiety, depression. They're going through these things. Psychosis, some of that stuff is from self-medication and getting high, your K2 and all that stuff. But whatever the case is, or even from being possessed by jinn. Muslims almost don't even believe in this stuff no more. Right? All of these things, it's pulling you away, and it's changing you. So you don't have much aspiration. Our aspiration, if everybody around you, ain't inspiring or nothing, because why? And this is just the way Allah Ta'ala created us. We're people that we're people that move in groups. You can talk all that. I don't need my family stuff to whatever extent. If you ever been in jail, if you ever been in a psych unit, most of the people you talk to people at the hospital, I talk to all different facets of people because I work EMS. When you don't have family, these people be some of the most treacherous, the worst people that you can find. And why is that? Because they feel the world don't care about family, don't care about me, I don't care about nobody else. I gotta get it how I live it. The only substitution that people, when they get isolated, they find a substitute family. And it's why many of our young boys are joining gangs. This is why you always felt at home in a gang, right? But the thing is, the gang, it don't have any good with it. It usually just lands you in jail or dead, right? You have to act on order. If you in a gang and you think, I just want to be here for the camaraderie, it feels good, man, we all hanging out together, and they tell you go rob that bank, you got to go rob that bank. And if you don't, you're going to get dealt with. See, that's by way of force. Islam doesn't do that. We have the same mentality. We ain't trying to rob the bank. We want to get to Jannah. We trying to rob them good deeds. Right? We're brothers to get together, and be competing secretly, giving sadaqah. There's somebody that needs their needs met. You try to meet them before somebody else get to them. Right? Because you want to get that ajr. You want to get that reward. Right? Those type of things. We're not competing on that level. The only thing we seem to be competing on is who can be the most isolated individual. Right? And this is what's happening Islamically. This is what's happening, and it's destroying the community. It's breaking the community down. Each one teach one. We vibe off of each other's vibe. There's a brother there's a brother in this gathering right now, online or whatever, that's probably follows the sunnah in certain aspects more than I do. And I follow it in certain aspects. And he follow it in certain aspects. And what we do, that suhbah, that camaraderie, it comes together and it encourages us. This is what a marriage is supposed to do. A marriage, if you look at the Muslim marriages, our marriage is a disaster. And the clear sign of that is the product that we're producing. Look at our children. Look at our children. Mother, father righteous, right? Or sometimes the father righteous, the mother halfway in Islam, halfway Muslim, right? Father go out to work, mother let the children do whatever they want. There's no structure. Oh yeah, you want to know? Don't even worry about studying that stuff. Your father, he be extra, right? You dealing with the double brand, and Allah tested prophets by means of this, right? So these things, these are serious things, and encouraging you. This is the path. This is the tariqah. This is that path. This is the turuq. This is the suluk. Anything that you want to use, whatever word you want to use, this is that path that will get you to Jannah. This is ground zero. You learn the proper aqidah. You learn your fiqh. You learn your tasawwur. Then you move to the next level, right? Move to the next level. But in the midst of all that, I encourage every last one of you all as students, as my students, whether you consider yourself one or not. If you don't ever come back to class, at one day I'll say, yo, he was my student at one point in time. He just left the class. Khalas, right? However, you have an obligation to do a few things. And it's all really centered around one thing. Learn how to read the Quran. Read the Quran. Read it in English until you learn Arabic. Memorize the Quran. Study the tafsir of the Quran, along with learning your fara'ain and getting and get your everyday livelihood. That is the best way to be Muslim. And try to have an exemplary family. I'm not telling you to show off for the public, but how do you have that exemplary family? By trying to follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ as hard and as much as possible as you can. Be an encouragement, right? Let this penetrate. Let this motivate you. This is only the first class. I just gave you a little primer, right? After next week, we really gonna get into, we're gonna get into it. We'll get into all of the vocabulary words. We'll be covering about the basis of tahara, which always begin with water, because the water is primarily everything that you need in order to purify yourself, right? Soap doesn't do it. Irish Spring doesn't do it. It's actually a deodorant. If you read it, I think they still put it on the bars. It says soap deodorant. Soap is just a deodorizer, right? Some of the chemicals, yes, and there's rulings for that, where you put chemicals and soap in your clothing. There's rulings for that too, right? Can you make wudu with flavored water and so on and so forth? It's there's rulings for that. Let me see. Nobody posting any questions. No. So, these things, I'm telling you, I promise you, it's very important, and if we're in the group as students and classmates, right, you're going to know who Allah Ta'ala blessed, that the person that has a good understanding, you can help someone else understand in those groups. Don't delve off. Just try to stay on track. One of the things that hinders a lot of us as students is we got our hands everywhere and don't accomplish anything. You can't build a house except brick by brick, right? But we be like, I'm gonna put a brick over here and put a window over there, right? You ain't even got the rest of the frame of the house built. But we put up windows, chandeliers, ceiling fans, and so on and so forth. How you doing all that and we don't have the whole foundation of the house built? So we have to build the foundation. Stay focused. Keep the agenda. You got Arabic. Sidi Ahmed is teaching Arabic. Eventually, I'm gonna teach a beginner's Arabic. Also, within the coming weeks, I'm also gonna start, which is kind of redundant to some degree, but I don't believe so, because of the method on how we learn Islam in the Bilad of Sudan is that you go over a book, and one book may take you to a certain point. Like, for instance, in the past, at Master Usman and Fodio, one of the brothers, let me make sure he's still on here. I ain't gonna put you out there, but one of my students here, he studied with me the Akhdari. It ain't just one, it's a few of them. He studied the Akhdari. That's how we met each other, right? Then we went from the Akhdari to Sulam al-Huda. Now, if you ever study the Akhdari goes over certain adab, and then it goes over Tahara and Salah, right? Tahara and Salah. That's it. Then we went over Sulam al-Huda. And Sulam al-Huda, all it did was focus on just the rules pertaining to the Salah according to the Maliki school. He sat in on that. And I remember the reaction from that class, like, yo, we didn't cover this. Because each level, each layer, it takes you another notch. It gives you a little bit extra, a little bit extra, right? So we went from Sulam al-Huda, then we did Umdat'l Bayaan, right? Then we stopped. Then I started doing, we didn't complete that, but we only covered like the Aqidah section. We covered another book of Sheikh Usman and Fodio, Miratul Tulab, right? But guess what? It would have went into Salat and so on and so forth, but it didn't go into it in the same manner the way that Umdat'l Bayaan went into it. Then I remember at one point we went over Umdat'l Muta'abidin, where we just discussed the proofs, the usuli, the qawaid, the principal proofs of the ahkam, of the rulings. Meaning, each proof in there, if you memorize one proof in there, from the proof from each subject, you became a learned person in that particular subject. Like for instance, how many wudu, right? I don't expect everybody to know this. In wudu, you have two categories. It's broken into two categories, and it depends on according to which teaching. Anyway, you have two categories. You had the fara'id, right? The fard, those are obligatory, is 7, and then you have the sunnah, right, which is 8. Okay. From that, now you got to know the proof. What's the proof that you have seven fard actions of wudu? This is in that book of Umdat'l Muta'abidin. It's also in Umdat'l Ulama and all the other books. But anyway, Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idha kuntum ila salat, right? When you get ready to approach the prayer. Now what's the first obligation of wudu? Niyyah, right? Niyyah. That's the first obligation, is your intentions. Idha kuntum, when you stand for prayer. Idha kuntum ila salat, that's when you make your intention, right? فَغَسَّلُوا وَجْهِ, then wash your face, right? وَيَدِّ إِلَى مِرَافِقَيْنِ, and that hand to the elbow, right? I know some people, they wash their hand and then they just wash their wrist. No, according to the Amal of Medina, the school of Medina, your hand to the elbow, right? One motion, and in between the fingers, and that's later on discussion. But you get my point. It's based off that ayat. Can't nobody tell you that you don't understand wudu. Then you learn what breaks wudu, right? Then you learn the rulings were connected to wudu. If I miss one of the obligations of wudu, is my wudu still valid, right? If I miss one of the sunnahs of wudu, is my wudu still valid, right? What if I prayed and I missed one of the obligations of wudu and I didn't remember until I was in the prayer? Is my prayer valid? Right? This is why you're learning this like this. This is what is called hukm, the legal judgment. All right? And I promise you, we're going to get into it. We're going to get good. I'm encouraging everybody, get the notes, the recordings. I'm going to put the recordings up. Zoom, we're going to have a recording. You're going to have to use the passcode to listen to it. The videos, the couple videos that I'm going to do online, like I said, I'm doing a few of these videos online, because I want to create kind of like a private atmosphere for Umdat'l Bayaan. But when I do the Akhdari, I'm going to do the Akhdari on Facebook Live. I'm going to do it in our group. All right? So, Umdat'l Bayaan, we want to utilize the Telegram group. We want to, get to the Zoom classroom, because it's a little more personal, right? And when it's a little more personal, then I can say, hey, yes, I know, such and such, he learned with me. I granted, gave me ijazah to teach, teach the books, blah, blah, blah. You see what I'm saying? It's a little more personal. Yeah, it's online, but it's still a little more personal. I know that you're in class. And if you don't have your name set up on your Zoom, set it up so I know, who's who. So I know who's who. But we're going to cover a lot. For me, fiqh is fun. I think you just go in there, you click on your the icon of your name, and it should give you the option where it should say pop up and say rename or something like that. You change your name. Look in your settings. Matter of fact, your profile settings on Zoom. You have to do it after class, otherwise you're gonna log out. But however, these things are important. I promise you. If your life doesn't change by learning your Fardu Ayn, and you're gonna have some moments where you're gonna have rough patches. I'll give you a personal story. Those who study with me know what story I'm telling you because it's a true story. When I was learning Umdat'l Bayaan with two of my teachers, and we started learning Maliki fiqh, I went through this phase. I didn't pray behind nobody. I ain't want to pray behind you. I ain't want to pray behind you because I didn't have husnul dhan. I didn't get that softness, that raqiq. I didn't get that softness back until I got to tasawwuf, right? Because I didn't realize that I was becoming takabbur. I was becoming arrogant. You know what I'm saying? Because this is one of the things we learn about the sunnah, and our strictness comes out of the love and the zeal that we have for the deen and for the Prophet ﷺ and for Allah Azza wa Jalla. But that softness that's displayed, you will only get that from the characteristic of the Prophet ﷺ or from a teacher who shares those particular traits where he learned those characteristics of the Prophet ﷺ. Right? That's when things started to change. Right? I'm pretty sure you guys heard about some of the things that goes on in Philly. And the only reason why it's Philly, not like other places, because Philly sometimes the people here they have a lot of himma. They have a lot of spiritual enthusiasm, and they kind of like got that mentality, like, yo, I'm so wrong. Anything I can do to get right, I'll do it, even if I gotta die for it. A lot of people had that mentality. So there was a particular point. There was a community here that they prayed their issue. The Qibla issue was an issue, and they differed with the Qibla than the rest of the other masajids in the city. Now, according to the school that they follow, they have to be exact, right? There's no wiggle room for them. And so they were teaching people this. And our people are very zealous, and believe it. And I ain't saying the teachers don't believe this, because they actually do. The difference between our people that learn from these people is these people, they stay in their community. Our people, we want to go out and spread it to the world, which is part of our zeal. But sometimes the method that we use to go spread ain't too wise. And then it get to the point, he going around, going to people, stand on their minbar, y'all dudes are praying the wrong way. What? Yeah. And then people was getting offended. They came together. I'm pretty sure y'all heard the story before if y'all listened to the round table. Imam explained the story. But the case in point is, they were acting on what they felt was right. But what you don't get is that wisdom from the sunnah. We'll emphasize on sunnah on how to wear thawb, grow a beard. But our behavior doesn't match. Our private life doesn't match that. Right? Our private life doesn't match that. So, we have to begin to envelop all of that. And that was one of the beautiful things. If you look at the Muwatta, look at the secret of the Muwatta. I encourage people to study Muwatta. Now, I will say this. You'll find in the Muwatta Imam Malik's level of scholarship of him being a muhaddith, where there's hadith that's in the Muwatta that he accepted as sound, but he didn't act on it. Because if the action was contrary to that of the amal, he didn't follow it. You'll find principles of usul in there, and that's for later on in your studies. I know some of this stuff is probably going over some people's heads, but you can't be stranger. How do you learn if you don't mix with the people? You got to start to learn the language somehow, right? You know, I know some of us are corporate. Some of us come straight from like brevoid projects and all that stuff. You learn how to talk real corporate when you get that job, don't you? Well, learn the language, learn your deen in that same manner, carry that same behavior, have that same enthusiasm. You're going to learn these big words. You want to sound intelligent. See, me, I was influenced by Malcolm. I always loved Malcolm. Malcolm throw a word in there, and then the rappers of my generation, you know, they throw some words in there. Now, hold on, I'm gonna read your comment 1 second, Tyler. You know, you will hit the dictionary after that. So, you know, so sometimes what you get, I have slang. I can get half slang on you, and then I can turn, you know, get a little corporate. It's all about communicating. It's actually an ayat in the Quran, communicating the language that people understand, right? Yeah, that's how we do it. But anyway, let me read this comment, inshallah, and then I'm gonna close out, inshallah. Exactly. Umar didn't want anything narrated that wasn't practiced in Medina. And that, you know, there's a backstory to that. Because it happened in both Umar's lives. The grandfather and the grandson. Okay, yeah, I'll share that for you, inshallah. The grandfather and the grandson. I'll put it in the discussion group, inshallah. Umar, well, I say the grandfather and grandson. Umar ibn Khattab is the grandfather of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And at a point, Umar, and even during some of Sayyidina Abu Bakr's Khilafah, you know how Umar used to verify hadith? Alhamdulillah, now we got, you know, the Senate and everything. Their way of Senate was on point. Omar will call you in, call you in. And he did this even during the life of the Prophet ﷺ, where he was talking about the different qira'ah, the different recitations. Omar called you in. He said, I hear that you narrate a hadith that you say you learned from the Prophet ﷺ. Yeah. He said, go ahead and narrate it. Right? But he would give you a warning. That if this isn't a hadith, if this hadith isn't verified, we're going to beat you. You got the authentic hadith. Right? The same way, trust me. Most people like, that's barbaric, that's inhumane. Bro, I know y'all watch police shows. Some people, I know y'all experience it. Sometimes the beating to get the truth out of your interrogation, it just depends on how far you go. Right? They can feel on the edge a little bit. They'll tell the truth. I'm not telling nobody to go out and beat people to get the truth. I'm just saying, you see it in every day. People, because most of the way our mind think, we be like, oh my God, it's so barbaric. I heard somebody say that before. It was in a lecture. He was like, you know, he was comparing now to back during the time of Omar. And he would say, how would you feel? You know, you knew that the Caliph would beat you if you wasn't telling the truth. You know, I was like, wow, you know, you really just said that right now. So this is why, that's why I harp on it, that you know, I'm not, you know, emphasizing that. Absolutely, Malcolm did teach himself to read. Yeah. And the same thing, you used to hear words, you know, rappers say words and things, or a word you didn't know, you would hit the dictionary. You know, and that also I encourage as well. Get you Arabic dictionary. We'll get into that in another time. But my case in point is that in the Muwatta, read the Muwatta. There's another book is forthcoming. I'm working on putting it out. Inshallah, I'm organizing it and everything, you know. And it's the Shehu. The Shehu has his own style of a hybrid of the Muwatta, Bukhari and Muslim. Now, he's not quoting hadiths exclusively from the Muwatta, because every hadith that's in the Muwatta, you'll also find it in Bukhari and Muslim too. But he has his own style, and it goes over the Fardu Ain. That's the beautiful thing. So what you learn in here, the Shehu, he has a book that goes over the same thing, but with all of the narrations. All of the narrations. I taught a couple classes from it. You can find it on a YouTube channel. I taught it at Master Youth Manor. You know, I didn't teach it for a little while there, you know, just been in the cut. But yeah, but anyway, so encourage you, you know, so that, you know, we can, you know, change our character. And when people start to see your character change, then they want to be on what you want, right? The masses will hear what you're talking about, but only the intelligent will watch what you do and follow what you do. And you'll learn this, especially as you read Sirah. And then also, I didn't forget, we also have the Shama'il. We're going to have a Sirah class through the Shama'il Imam Tirmidhi. Don't worry, I'll keep everybody posted, inshallah. I had to do some moving, some life changes and stuff like that going on. I'm back in school again, so, if you've been trying to call me, I've been a little complicated to get in touch with. But don't give up. Text me. Talk a little trash, make me feel bad sometimes. Like my man, he'd be like, "Yo, man, what's up, man? You still ain't answer my question from like 5 days ago." He threw that right out there. I was like, "Yo, my bad, I got you." Right? I don't take offense to that. You know what I'm saying? It's not offensive. But anyway, so we'll conclude today's class, inshallah. Like I said, it's in the Facebook Live group. I'll have the Zoom meeting, and the code, it'll be in our supporter explanation, the group, not the discussion group. And the stuff that I said I was going to put in the group, somebody text me and remind me if I forget to put that, the stuff that you wanted me to quote, inshallah. And, we can have some nice dialogue, man, because, still iron sharpens iron, right? Have a nice little dialogue. Have dialogue. We ain't going to get no debates and nothing like that, inshallah. Hopefully, we don't have, like, that Wahhabi element existing amongst us where, coming in and then we start arguing about istiwa ala arsh, Still sharp and still. All right, I like that too. We take that. But stay in group, dialogue. Because I promise you, right now you have to stay amongst like-minded people. If you don't stay amongst like-minded people, I'm telling you, they'll take you. You'll be swimming down the river raft somewhere, and then you'll find yourself alone. Because once they isolate you, and Shaitan, he inspires other Muslims, use Muslims to isolate you. Right? I see Muslims go through it all the time. 1 minute they on this minhaj, next minute they on that minhaj, this minute they on this minhaj. Then they hurt everybody's feelings in the midst of all that. And they go back and gotta apologize, and they try to make new friends again, and then they get tired of it because every time you turn around they changing their minhaj every other direction they go. And then they just stay by themselves, and then they get weak. So gotta stay strong. Alright, Muslims, stay Muslim, stay black, stay proud. Stay Latino, my man. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.